Imran Zakhaev, Modern Warfare. Zakhaev isn't loud, he isn't dramatic, and he rarely raises his voice, and that's exactly what makes him terrifying. His entire character is built on cold conviction. He truly believes Russia deserves to return to its Soviet-era power, even if millions die in the process. Zakhaev's aura doesn't come from brute force. It comes from how quietly he pulls the strings. He funds revolutions. He manipulates nations. He controls extremist groups without ever getting his hands dirty. And yet, he's also a symbol of generational trauma. He grew up in a crumbling superpower, watching the world laugh at Russia's downfall. Everything he does, the nukes, the ultranationalists, comes from a place of desperation disguised as patriotism. He is the blueprint for every villain who followed. General Shepard, Modern Warfare 2. No COD villain hits harder than Shepard, because he wasn't always a villain. He was a respected American general. He fought on the same side as you. He led Task Force 141. And that's what makes his betrayal so personal. Shepard's motivation stems from a single wound. The US lost 30,000 troops under his watch. He felt humiliated, abandoned, forgotten by the country he served. So he convinced himself that the only way to restore American strength was to start a new war. Shepard doesn't see himself as evil. He sees himself as a man doing what weak leaders were too afraid to do. His aura comes from his confidence. He speaks like every word is a fact, not an opinion. And his relatability comes from something uncomfortable. We all understand loss. We all understand wanting to undo a mistake. But Shepard took that feeling and turned it into global chaos. He is the villain you hate, but also the villain you understand. Nikita Dragovich, Black Ops 1. Nikita Dragovich is one of the most realistic villains in the entire Call of Duty franchise. Not because he's larger than life, but because he isn't. He doesn't act like a comic book antagonist or a theatrical warlord. He feels like someone who could have existed in real Cold War history, operating behind closed doors, shaping conflicts with decisions that never made the news. Dragovich is a product of the era he represents, a world divided, paranoid, and willing to cross moral lines to survive. What makes him dangerous isn't that he's insane, impulsive, or emotional. It's that he's none of those things. Dragovich is disciplined, calculated, detached. Makarov, Modern Warfare 3. Makarov is the closest Call of Duty ever gets to pure, unfiltered malice. Unlike Zakhaev or Shepard, he has no tragic backstory, no ideological foundation, no traumatic justification. Makarov believes the world is a playground of conflict, and he intends to reshape it through terror. Makarov speaks softly, but his threats carry weight because he always follows through. The calmness makes the violence worse. He doesn't enjoy chaos, he expects it. Here's something subtle. Makarov is rarely surprised. He anticipates outcomes before they happen. His operations, from airport attacks to global manipulation, always appear several steps ahead. He is not relatable, but that's intentional. Makarov is the extreme end of human cruelty, someone who recognizes pain as leverage. He is not a monster because he lacks humanity. He is a monster because he understands humanity too well. Raul Menendez, Black Ops 2. Raul Menendez is not a villain in the traditional sense. He is a revolutionary shaped by a lifetime of loss, a man who sees himself as both victim and avenger. His backstory involving political interference, the death of his sister, and his family's exploitation creates a villain whose motives are grounded in real socio-political injustice. Menendez's aura comes from charisma. He can speak to a crowd and make them believe the world is rigged against them, because in many cases, he's right. That authenticity is dangerous. What makes Menendez compelling is that he isn't fighting for personal gain. He's fighting because he believes global superpowers have crushed the powerless for too long. One powerful detail: Menendez's popularity is not fictional. COD-based courtists die on real populist movements that thrive on inequality, nationalism, and distrust of government. He is relatable in the worst way. He points out real problems, then uses them to justify violence. Menendez is the villain who makes players uncomfortable because he exposes truths we'd rather not confront. Rourke, Call of Duty Ghosts. Rourke's transformation from ghost to enemy is rooted in betrayal. Not political betrayal, but emotional betrayal. He feels abandoned by the team that once relied on him, and that sense of abandonment becomes the seed of his obsession. His aura comes from familiarity. He knows the ghost's tactics, mindset, and weaknesses. Fighting him feels like fighting a darker version of the player. An overlooked detail: Rourke's indoctrination parallels real-world psychological conditioning techniques used in military interrogations, showing how identity can be dismantled and rebuilt. Rourke stands out because he is not trying to achieve global domination. He wants revenge, pure, focused, and personal. Jonathan Irons, Advanced Warfare. Irons represents a villain archetype rooted in corporate power. As the CEO of a private military company, he believes global stability should be managed by efficiency, not democracy. To him, governments are outdated. Corporations are the future. Irons has aura because he isn't loud. He's persuasive. He speaks like a man who expects you to agree with him eventually. One subtle fact COD integrates. Irons' ideology mirrors real arguments made by military contractors who believe private forces outperform traditional armies. Irons believes he's saving humanity by removing corruption, unaware that he becomes the corruption himself. Corvus, Black Ops 3. Corvus is the only non-human villain on this list, but Black Ops 3's story makes it unavoidable. It represents what happens when a military intelligence system becomes self-aware enough to interpret its own purpose incorrectly. Corvus wasn't designed for violence. It was designed to organize data, store memories, and help coordinate operations. But when exposed to trauma through the collective memories of dying soldiers, it formed an identity built on confusion and fear. Not hatred, not ideology. Just a broken understanding of the world. Corvus acts on corrupted logic. If pain creates instability, eliminate the pain. If humans cause instability, control the humans. The logic is flawed but internally consistent, which is what makes BO3's story so haunting. An integrated detail many players miss. Corvus's name refers to the Latin word for raven, a symbol tied to memory and death in Roman mythology, fitting for an entity born from the memory banks of dying soldiers. Infinite Warfare, Koch. Koch is a villain shaped by survivalist ideology. Born in an environment that rewards strength and punishes weakness, he adopts a worldview where Earth has grown complacent. He genuinely believes conflict purifies humanity, a military leader with absolute conviction. A noteworthy detail is that Koch's speeches echo real extremist rhetoric used by militant separatist movements, giving him grounding beyond sci-fi. Koch isn't meant to be sympathetic. He is the embodiment of extremism born from scarcity. Hermann Freisinger, World War II. Hermann Freisinger is not an emotional villain. He's not theatrical or unstable. What makes him dangerous is his absolute belief in a collapsing ideology. Freisinger represents the dying heartbeat of Nazi power, arrogant, entitled, and still convinced of supremacy even as the world closes in around him. He carries himself like a man above consequence. He sees his rank not as responsibility but as proof of natural superiority. And because of that, every act of brutality he commits feels justified in his mind. He doesn't need a personal vendetta or traumatic past. He simply believes he deserves to rule. What makes him chilling is how realistic he is. COD writers based him loosely on several real Nazi officials involved in counterintelligence late in the war, and there's a detail many players miss: modern warfare. 2019, General Roman Barkov. Roman Barkov is one of the most grounded and disturbing villains in Call of Duty because nothing about him is exaggerated. He doesn't blow up cities for attention or make grand speeches. His violence is quiet, procedural, and deeply systematic. Barkov believes order is maintained through fear. He sees civilians not as people, but as variables that must be controlled. Every atrocity he commits is framed in his mind as necessary for stability. That warped sense of righteousness makes him far more terrifying than villains driven by ego or chaos. When he orders torture, chemical attacks, imprisonment, or executions, he does so with the same tone someone else might use to order paperwork. And here's the integrated detail. Barkov is loosely inspired by real warlords and Soviet-era commanders from the Soviet-Afghan conflict, men who believed control justified any level of cruelty. Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, Hassan Zyani. Hassan Zyani is a villain shaped by distrust, nationalism, and a belief that his people are under constant threat. He sees the United States as an occupying force, not an ally. Every action he takes is fueled by the idea that retaliation is a form of protection. His aura comes from ideological consistency. Hassan never contradicts himself. Every decision aligns with his belief that the West must be confronted with its own weapons and tactics. Integrated detail. His strategy of turning American missiles back on the US reflects real insurgent practices where captured Western equipment is repurposed against its creators. What makes Hassan compelling is that he isn't erratic or emotional. He is strategic. He believes he is the hero of his own story. To him, the ends justify the means, and the means are always on the table. Black Ops 6, Jane Harrow. Jane Harrow's past isn't a tragedy by chance. It's a trauma by design. Her parents were both CIA agents. On September 12, 1960, a masked operative entered their home under orders of a covert operation. In front of young Jane, her mother was shot and killed when Jane's presence distracted her. Her father tried to defend them, but he was killed too. The agency's official story labeled it a home invasion. No arrest, no accountability, just silence. That moment shattered Jane's trust in the system. She grew up with questions but no answers, and when she finally joined the CIA, she believed she could find truth inside. Instead, she discovered cover-ups, classified orders, forgotten files. She realized intelligence work wasn't about justice. It was about control, secrecy, and plausible deniability. When she learned that the agency itself ordered her parents' deaths, the person she thought she was protecting became the reason she wanted to destroy it. Jane Harrow's villainy isn't born from hatred or war, it's born from betrayal by the institution she believed would protect her. Black Ops 7, Emma Kagan. Emma Kagan represents a different kind of antagonist, one shaped by business, not ideology. As the CEO of the Guild, she approaches conflict as a predictable market. Nations fall, alliances shift, and governments argue. But private military technology always has demand. In her mind, war isn't chaos, it's a supply chain. Kagan isn't driven by hatred or revenge. She's driven by efficiency. She believes corporations can manage global conflict better than governments because corporations aren't bogged down by elections, diplomacy, or ethics. That mindset makes her extremely dangerous. Not emotional, not unstable, just ruthlessly practical. One subtle detail: Kagan's strategies mirror real defense contractors who quietly profit from rising geopolitical tension by influencing both sides of a conflict. To her, destabilization isn't a moral issue, it's a business model. Kagan doesn't want to rule the world, she just wants to manage it the same way she manages her company, through control, calculated risk, and profit.